later on how Parikshit became a very powerful king, how the Pandavas, they handed over the entire kingdom to Parikshit Maharaj. Then we'll see some life of Parikshit Maharaj. For example, when Lord Krishna was performing his Leela, so how did Parikshit Maharaj play a role in it? Parikshit Maharaj also played a role along with the gopis. So there are a lot of pastimes in Vrindavan also. Then after that, what we will also hear is, we'll also hear about Parikshit Maharaj taking religiosity as a top priority, right? So the 4 religious principles are what? The 4 pillars of religion. So how did he protect those 4 pillars of religion? Then how Kali was sort of controlled. Kali was growing and stronger, and how Parikshit Maharaj controlled Kali. Then, of course, the pastimes of the curse. And then, how did Parikshit Maharaj come to this scene? So that is a separate episode, which will require about 45 minutes or 1 hour. We will have a separate session. We'll discuss life of Parikshit Maharaj there, right? So by this, we will complete the first 4 questions asked by Shaunak Rishi to Suta Goswami. Okay. Now, in the first 2 slokas, that is text 1 and the text 2, you will see in the past we have seen about the glories and standing of the preacher, Suta Goswami. Now, here, when Suta Goswami is assembled, we also want to know who is it that he is inviting, who's the personality, the leader of this congregation, inviting such a great preacher. Is he having enough honor? Is he having enough eligibility to invite such a personality, right? So, for example, now let's say you're inviting the Prime Minister of India. Prime Minister of India is invited properly and he is made to sit down, but not every Tom, Dick and Harry can do that. The person who's inviting the Prime Minister of India should also be very eligible, should be also high cadre, right? So here Bhagavatam is concluding what is the position of this personality, who Shaunak Rishi. Is he a proper leader? Is he properly representing? So that's the first sloka, right? Sri Vyasa Vacha Iti Brubhanam Samstuya Muninam Dhirga Satrinam Vriddha Kulapati Sutam Bhavrachaha Shaunako Abravit. If you look at the translation, Vyasadeva said, on hearing Suta Goswami speak, thus, Shaunak Rishi, who was the elderly, learned leader of all the rishis, engaged in the prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Suta Goswami by addressing him as follows, right? So now, if you look at these qualifications, there are 3 qualifications that Bhagavatam is speaking. He's talking about this word, Vriddha. Look at this word, Vriddha. Vriddha means he is very elderly. Okay, what does elderly generally mean in a spiritual life? Elderly in a spiritual life, of course in the material life also, in the spiritual life means one who has experienced and realized spirituality for a longer period of time. That means he has many experiences of the do's and don'ts. You've seen many scenarios. So that tells the richness and experience. That is what elderly means here. Okay. Then they're telling he's Kulapatihi. What is Kulapatihi? He's the head of the assembly. That means whatever he says, the entire assembly will listen, will accept. One way. Another way is, he is a Samman Bonam representation of the needs of the assembled sages. Right? If all the assembled sages have queries, so he will represent them properly. So that's what the head of the assembly means. Okay? He decides the rules and regulation of the assembly, and accordingly everyone listens and follows. Okay. Third, he is also Bahuvrichaha. See this Bhavrichaha or Bahuvrichaha. Okay? He is very learned. It is not that Shaunaka is a very ordinary person. He is also scholarly. he understands when Veda Shastra is represented in a scholarly manner. So that means you have to understand the real position of Shaunaka, right? So that's what this sloka is mainly talking about. It also talks about the glories of the leader representing the rishis. Okay. If you come to the purport, you can see these two words, yadaditam and yatamati. Okay. So now what are these two words? When Shaunaka Rishi is asking Suta Goswami, "O Suta, can you please tell us all the narrations of Srimad Bhagavatam as heard from Sukadeva Goswami?" So first thing he's asking, yataditam means you please simply tell us whatever you heard from Sukadeva Goswami as it is. He's telling, do not change, do not adulterate. Very, very important. And in fact, Prabhupada says that this is one of the qualifications of an acharya in the parampara, or a devotee in the parampara. What does that mean? He simply speaks what the previous acharyas have spoken. So he's asking, Sukadeva Goswami is such a realized soul. Whatever you heard in the arena that day when Sukadeva Goswami preached Parikshit, you please tell us exactly the same. Yataditam. And he says, Yatamati. Yatamati means you can add your realization to that. So, for example, you are explaining a particular concept of Vedic life. You also would have experienced by your own practices, own realization, because the Chaitya Guru is there in the heart of each one of us. He starts to explain us the details. So whatever you've realized, that also you can share with us. So that means they're asking two things. What are the two things? Please give us the knowledge as spoken by Sukadeva Goswami as it is, no adulteration, plus add your self-realization, because that will add nectar to it. So now how Sukadeva Goswami's preaching of Bhagavatam was very great, because though Vyasadeva compiled Srimad Bhagavatam, Sukadeva Goswami being a pure devotee, he actually is a personal confidential servant of Srimati Radharani. A pure devotee is adding nectar to that and then giving it Srimad Bhagavatam. Hence it is more tasty, more nectarian. So similarly, the Shaunaka Rishis are also asking Sutta Goswami to add his realization. Right? In this way, they're asking Sutta Goswami, please recite whatever you heard, Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay? The first sloka is clear? Okay. Now let's go to the second sloka. Text 2. Shaunaka uvacha Suta Suta Mahabhaga Vadano Vadit Vadatam Vara Katam Bhagavatim Punyam Yat Aha Bhagavan Chukaha. Here Chukaha refers to Sukadeva Goswami. Okay. Now, here you see introduction of Sukadeva Goswami has begun. Right? Now they're all showing their eagerness. They are showing their anxiety to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay? So now, here, they are giving respect to the speaker. So they're calling him Mahabhaga. Mahabhaga means most fortunate. Right? He's telling, you speak. They're giving with that great respect. Translation. Shaunaka Rishi said, O Sutta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and the powerful sage Sukadeva Goswami. Okay. Now, here you see the position of the students who want to hear. They're showing their eagerness. They're talking about what they want to hear, and they're giving the right respects and salutations to the speaker who's representing Sukadeva Goswami. So you see, all these things, it pleases the preacher to give the right message. Now, when you're sitting in a Srimad Bhagavatam class, right? The preacher could start speaking about the sloka. He may start with narrations. But the audience also should be very respectful. If the audience are not respectful, then you see the speaker is not going to speak everything fully. How audience can be respectful in an arena like this? One, they should express their eagerness, their anxiety to hear that properly. Second, they cannot be a disturbing factor in the arena, right? Either through their gestures, postures, or speaking between, attending cell phones, etc., whatever it may be, right? So like that, the audience must also represent them properly, right? By this, you see, they are showing their eagerness, and they also want to ensure that the speaker also doesn't give any bogus lectures, right? Here, Sudha Goswami is clearly represented as a bona fide representative of Sukadeva Goswami. So they are very confident that they're going to hear the transcendental subject to its fullness, right? Many a times, the preachers need to be very careful about impersonal representations, because Srimad Bhagavatam is personal representation of Krishna. So the speaker also must be very careful in choice of words that he uses. Okay. So that's about the audience, that's about the speaker, that's about the mood for hearing. Okay, so now we'll come to the first questions. Text 3. Can you get some water? 1 second.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, bro, 1 second.
Yes.
I'm just trying to drink some water.
Yes.
Okay, so now we'll come to the first question. So look at the first question. Kasmin yuge pravirteyam stane vakena hetuna kutah sanchodita Krishna kritavan samhitam munihi. So now look at these words. He's asking, Kasmin yuge pravirteyam. This is in which time period this conversation happened? Okay. Sthane vakena hetuna. So here, sthane means position or the place. Which place and what ground was this conversation happening? And what inspired? So, kutaha sanchodita Krishna. Krishna means on to Krishna, or personality here refers to as Vyasdev. Okay. So, sanchodita inspired. How did Vyasdev get inspired? What was his root cause of inspiration? Okay. Then it is asking, Samhitam. Samhitam means generally compilation of Vedic hymns and literatures and things like that. So he's asking, what inspired this personality Vyasdev that he compiled such a great literature? Right? So that's the question here. So the question is like this. In what period and what place was the first begun? And why was this taken up? From where did Krishna Dvayampayana Vyasa, the great sage, get the inspiration to compile this literature? So this is a question they're asking. So please tell us. So this shows their eagerness. This shows their inquisitiveness. They want to know everything about Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay? So now let's go to text 4. Tasya putro mahayogi samadrin nirvikalpaha ekanta mate unindro godo moda iveyate. So look at the translation. It talks about Vyasdev, Vyasdev's son. So Mahayogi here refers to the great devotee Sukadeva Goswami. Okay. He is a great devotee, a son of a great devotee, an equibalanced monist. So here monist does not mean that he is a Mayavadi. Okay. Monist here refers to Pandita. Okay, what is a Pandita? We have read in Bhagavad Gita. What did we read? Pandita Samadarshinaha. Right? We've read that, no? So here, Pandita Samadarshina means he does not differentiate two personalities based on their bodily aspect. He sees the soul as something having a common relationship to Krishna. Jivera Swarupaya Nitya Krishna Dasa. That is the monism here. Okay. Whose mind was always concentrated in monism. He was transcendental to mundane activities. Mundane here refers to material activities. That means he is not interested in many material activities. But being unexposed, he appeared like an ignorant man. So that means externally, Sukadeva Goswami is looking very ordinary. Okay? Sages, they look ordinary. But they have very, very high thinking, great philosophy that they can give us. Now here, we have to understand the difference between a realized, a liberated person versus a conditioned person. Right? So this purport is very, very important. So let's look at this purport. The purport alone we will learn. Sukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul. And he always remained alert not to be trapped by the illusionary energy. Okay, so how did this happen? We'll talk about the life of Sukadeva Goswami, but I'll just talk about the last part alone. Vyasadev's wife name is called Bitika. After, Vyasadeva impregnated Bitika, Sukadeva Goswami, who was born, and 9 months over, the child has to be born. But he said he is not willing to come out of the womb of Bitika. Vyasadeva explained Sukadeva Goswami many things. He said, no, if you guarantee me that after my birth, I will not be influenced by the 3 gunas, the 3 modes of material nature, then I will come. That means what? At birth only he wants to be liberated. He doesn't want to be conditioned at any point in time. So even though Vyasadeva assured, he said, no, I don't take your words. Because you're a grihastha, I can't take your words. So then Vyasadeva goes all the way to Dwaraka and invites Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then invites him to come to his house to give assurance to Sukadeva Goswami. So when Krishna gives that assurance, he comes and he speaks to Sukadeva, and then in the womb, and he gives assurance, yes, the 3 modes of material nature will not affect you. Then he was born. So he was in the womb almost for 16 years in his mother's womb. And then he was born. That means he was born as a boy, not as a child. Right? So that is how the life of Sukadeva Goswami birth happened. So at birth only he is liberated. So in Bhagavad Gita, this alertness is very lucidly explained. The liberated and the conditioned soul have different engagements. Yeah, this is the biggest thing that we have to understand. What is spiritual life and what is material life? The irony is, in today's life, everyone thinks that if they wear a proper traditional sari, put some bindi, and then have some flowers, they think it is spiritual. If they come in ordinary dress, it's tradition. See, that is not understanding. That's improper understanding. The liberated soul is always engaged in progressive path of spiritual attainment. Today, my spiritual progress must be better than yesterday. That's how spiritual personalities or devotees, they plan their life. Conditioned soul, they can't even dream of. They think, okay, I will probably retire at the age of 60 and after that I'll figure out something about spirituality. So they don't even know that this life of 100 years in this human body is not enough to attain perfection. So they think that it's like a switch, it can happen in one day. The conditioned soul cannot imagine the engagement of the spiritual soul. They can't even know what their activities are. The spiritualist gets up very early in the morning, like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 3 o'clock. But while the conditioned soul is about to go to bed late in the evening, like 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. So they can't even imagine how can someone get up so early and practice. So Bhagavatam says the conditioned soul is always dreaming to practice spirituality, but while the spiritualists are already in that position. right? So this is called difference between goodness and ignorance. Ignorance means they always think, okay, I want to do that, I want to do this, I'll practice this, but they can never do that. That is conditioned state. In a liberated state, whatever may be the spiritual need, in one fraction of a second, they'll pick it up. Right? We also saw a difference between Raga Bhakti and Vaidika Bhakti. Spontaneous love. When the love is spontaneous, when a devotee is instructed on spiritual practices, he will take it up without hesitation, just like that. That's a need. And higher than that is, they don't need to be told. Even if they see a need, they'll start to do it. And that is an advancement in spiritual life. But while conditioned soul, they can't do it. So like that, you see, many brilliant explanations are giving what is the difference between conditioned and liberated souls. And now we can see Sukadeva Goswami. He was never conditioned in his life. Right from birth, because of the benediction of the Lord, he was always liberated. And because he was liberated, let us see his vision. What was his vision? That's explained in chapter 5, text 5. Dirstvanu yantam rishim atmajam api anagnam devo hriya paridadur nasutasya chitram tadiviksha prichatti munau jagadastavasti stripum vidanato sutasya vivikta drishte. Translation. This is a very, very beautiful pastime. Srila Vyasadeva was following his son. Beautiful young damsels who were bathing naked covered their bodies with cloth, although Vyasadeva himself was not naked. But they had not done so when his son had passed. So the sage inquired about this, and young ladies replied that his son was purified, and when looking at them made no distinction between male and female, but the sage made such distinctions. Okay, so let's understand this more detail. When Sukha was born, he straightaway walked out of the house. And Vyasadeva is running behind him. Oh, my son, please stop. Because he has to train him, no? On Srimad Bhagavatam. So he's asking, so he's running behind him, please stop, don't run. So first what happens, Sukadeva Goswami is walking and he passes a lake. In this lake, there are many women who are taking bath. Of course, when they take bath, they don't wear any clothes. But when Sukadeva Goswami passed the lake, they saw Sukadeva Goswami, but they didn't act. They just kept quiet. Here, acting means they didn't try to cover their body, or they felt shyness, or they felt that someone is seeing them. They felt never, nothing, zero. But when Vyasadeva, who's running behind Sukadeva Goswami, telling his son to stop, when he passes that lake after a few minutes, the damsels, these women who are naked taking bath, they immediately were scrambling for their clothes. Oh, a man is coming. They want to close their clothes. Right? So you see the position of a liberated, or the position of an avadut. Now here, Sukadeva Goswami was not able to distinguish between a male and a female, because he saw both of them as Jivatma, as the living force. A force, as children of Krishna. He didn't see their bodies. That's the transcendental vision. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmine Gavi Hastini Suni Chaiva Swapakecha Pandita Samadarshina. So that's exact representation of what he saw. He did not differentiate in their bodies. But that does not mean Vyasadeva was not liberated. Vyasadeva was liberated, but however, he was in a grihastha life. Now, what happens in a grihastha life? You are married to opposite sex, right? A man marries a woman marries a man. They marry opposite sex. But in opposite sex, if he doesn't differentiate between male and female, he cannot unite to do progeny. He cannot lead a grihastha life. So in that context, Vyasadeva was differentiating male and female, while Avadut, Sukadeva Goswami, was not differentiating them. right? So that's the important aspect that you have to understand. So you see, highly transcendental personalities, right? Their vision, their thought, they don't see the externals. They're not interested in all these things. So this is a classical representation of this one example. Okay? So let's go to the next sloka. Okay, text 6. Katam alakshitaha paurai sampraptaha kuru jangalan unmatta mukha jadavat vicharan gajasavaye. So here you see the question comes about Sukadeva Goswami, who's an Avadut, who may not wear dress most of the times. He's just wandering around and people may not even recognize him. But how did Parikshit Maharaj recognize him? And he was able to, connect with him to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So here in this sloka, it is said that he was wandering in the area of Hastinapur, right? Because somewhere the Chaitya Guru has already told him that it is time for you to narrate Srimad Bhagavatam. So he's wandering around the areas of Hastinapur. Now Hastinapur is the current New Delhi. Prabhupada says in his lecture, the New Delhi is called Hastinapur. And many of them could not recognize him. But when time comes, the connection between Parikshit Maharaj and Sukadeva Goswami will happen. Okay. Now, what shall we do is, now we will quickly spend about a couple of minutes or maybe 5 minutes in understanding the life of Sukadeva Goswami. So who was Sukadeva Goswami? He is one of the personal servant of Srimati Radharani. Very, very dear servant of Srimati Radharani. The word Sukha means parrot. And he was a very, very beautiful parrot. And Radharani would just love to have him all the time. And Sukha never missed Radharani. He will never get into a situation of separation from her. He cannot afford to do it. Always remembering, always serving her. And that was his mood. So when Radha and Krishna advented into this material world to perform their pastimes, they complete and they return back to the spiritual world. At the time, Radharani was about to leave, and Sukha came. Oh, Radharani, I'm also going to leave with you. She said, no, you have a task to do. So you will have to stay back, Sukha, here and perform that activity. Then Sukadeva Goswami says, or Sukha says, oh, Radhe, I cannot live without you. Please don't mean to put into my anxiety of separation from you. Please help me. Then Radharani says, wherever narrations of the pastimes of Sri Krishna is happening, and if you take association of that narration, you will never feel separation from me. That's the benediction she gives. So after you finish your assignment, you will return back to me in the spiritual world. Saying this, Radharani leaves this world. Then Sukha is now searching. Okay, where will I search for great sages or transcendentalists who will discuss the pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna? While searching in this material world here and there, everywhere, he could not find, and then finally he reached Kailash. In Kailash, he saw Shiva and Mother Parvati. They are discussing the glories of the pastimes of activities of Lord Krishna. So they were sitting under a tree, a big tree, a people's tree, and they were discussing. So what Sukha did? He flew into the tree and hid himself among the leaves, and stood on a branch, and he started to hear the glories and activities of Sri Krishna from the mouth of Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva is called the Dhira, the topmost of the Vaishnava. There, he will not flaw in any of his statement about discussing about the position of Lord Krishna. So he is coolly hearing. While he is hearing, Shiva is speaking and Parvati is responding. Okay. After every sloka, after every purport, Parvati would say, okay, I'm hearing him, nourishing. So like that, she kept on reciprocating with Lord Shiva. At some point in time, she stopped and she went into sleep mode. Oh, Parvati. But Sukha, what he did, he continued to hear. So as narrations of Lord Shiva continued to go on, instead of Parvati responding to say, okay, okay, he started to say the same thing. So Sukha was speaking on behalf of Parvati. So Lord Shiva kept on going, and then he finished the entire recitation of all the activities and pastimes of Lord Krishna. He suddenly realized that Mother Parvati was sleeping. Then he asked her, did you hear what I speak? Then Parvati was in a very, what do you say, in a precarious situation. She said, no, I heard partially, but after that I went off to sleep. I'm sorry, my Lord. Please forgive me for what I did. But Shiva was very anxious. Then who was responding to me with and okay and like that? So he started to search around. Then he suddenly saw this bird flying out of the tree. Oh, then Shiva got angry. He said, okay, I'm going to catch hold of this bird because this is a confidential subject and we cannot have living entities hear this. So he started to chase this parrot. He chased all over. And finally, the parrot flew everywhere and came to the hermitage of Srila Vyasdev. There, at the hermitage, what was happening? Vyasdev was preaching his wife about the pastimes and activities of the Lord. So his wife, at one point in time, started to yawn. Who? Vyasdev's wife. When she started to yawn, she opened her mouth and Sukha with great force just entered her mouth and went into the womb of her stomach. Right? So that's how Vikita became the mother of Sukadeva Goswami. So in the womb, this parrot started to develop his body, then became Sukadeva Goswami. And that's how he came out. So you see, this is the life of Sukadeva Goswami. But when Shiva came running, he came to the hermit of Vyasdev. Did you see this parrot here? I'm searching for it. He said, why? Because it heard all the pastimes and glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna. So I cannot allow that, because once they hear that, they become eternal and they become unconditioned to this material world. So we have to get hold of this bird. Then Vyasdeva tells, since the bird has already heard this entire Bhagavatam, he's already liberated. So what are you going to do with it? If he's liberated, there's nothing that he can do with it. So he's asking Shiva to leave. So you see the history behind Sukadeva Goswami and how he came into this entire situation. So hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam from Sukadeva Goswami means he's got training from his father Vyasdev. He heard Srimad Bhagavatam from the mouth of Lord Shiva. Now look at his knowledge, look at his realization. And hence Srimad Bhagavatam became so nectarian to hear from him. Right? So these are things that we need to understand about the glories of the speaker. Okay? Okay, now let's go to text 7. Katam va pandave yasya rajasher munina saha samvada samabhutata yatraisha satvati shrutihi. Here it is the conversation where Parikshit Maharaj comes in contact with Sukadeva Goswami to hear this great transcendental message. Right? Now, actually, the story goes something like this. Parikshit Maharaj is very lucky. How? Because imagine if someone is going to be given a time and date when he's going to die. He gets a chance for perfection. Right? But Krishna kept death as a very great secret. But in this current case, you can see that Parikshit Maharaj got time of 7 days, 7 nights, 2 before his death. So he was going and asking various questions from the sages in his kingdom. I have two questions. Can you please answer? Because now he knows when he's going to die. The two questions are what should be the life of a personality while he is alive? What sort of life he should lead? Right? And what should be the activities of a person when he's going to die? So these are the two questions that Parikshit Maharaj goes around and asks the great rishis in his kingdom, but no one is able to answer. They're saying, no, we are not in a position to answer. And that question, that inquisitiveness of Parikshit Maharaj, what made him to meet Sukadeva Goswami. Right? So that is this sloka. Okay. Now let's go to text 8. So till 8 is about the glories of Sukadeva Goswami. Okay. Sago dohana matram hi griheshu grihamedinam avakshate mahabhagas tirtha kurvam stadashramam. Translation. Sukadeva Goswami was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked. And he did just to sanctify the residence. Okay, so the 2 points that to understand here. Okay, so here, dohana matram. So matram means time limited activity. Dohana means is to extract something. That means he was trying to milk. From what? From the cow. Go is cow. Dohana matram. So he was spending his time, how much ever time it takes to milk the cow. So here Bhagavatham says about 30 to 45 minutes. So Sukha would appear into a householder, right? Then he would ask them, Bhiksham Dehe, and what they would do, they'll immediately, generally those days there were cows in every householders. So they would immediately milk the cow, and that is the time he spent with the householder. Once they milk the cow, they give the milk, he'll disappear. Right? So now this has two effects. One, the householder is getting the benediction of a greatest Brahmana Vaishnava Seva. One. Second, just the presence of a pure devotee, an Uttam Adhikari, in the house of a personality will purify his entire residence, his consciousness, his family, his lineage, everything. That householder becomes perfected in his life. Right? So, from both sides, if you look at it, from a householder point of view, there's a great benediction. From Sukadeva Goswami point of view, he awards this benediction, but importantly, to understand that, he doesn't unwantedly associate with Grihamedinam. Griheshu Grihamedinam. Who's Grihamedinam? Who are involved in sex life, involved in materialistic activities, and all such personalities. Right? So he doesn't want to associate with such persons. So as devotees, we associate only on a need basis. So for example, you're preaching. Yeah, go and associate with them, preach with them, make them devotees. Yeah, that's a great thing. But unwantedly, so for example, hey, I want to party, I want to go out, I want to spend time. You should avoid people who are materialist. You should always be in association of devotees. That's the point here that's been mentioned. Okay? Now, text 9. Abhimanyu sutam suta prahur bhagavatottamam tasya janma mahascharyam karmani cha grihinina. Translation. Now we are coming to the next question. What is the next question? Question number 3. What are the birth and activities of the first class devotee? Or here it is referred to as Parikshit Maharaj. Now, this Parikshit Maharaj, if you look at it, if you look at the translation, it is said that Maharaj Parikshit is a great first class devotee of the Lord. And that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him. The key words here are Bhagavatottamam. Here, Bhagavata Uttamam, the first class devotee of the Lord. Now, you should understand that Parikshit Maharaj was a great king. Now, what is the role of a king? The king is the head of the state. But it does not mean he can think and act whimsically. He is actually a representation of Lord Vishnu. What is his role is, he ensures that every citizen in his kingdom takes up spiritual life, understands devotion, and practices all the values of humanity. And that is his goal. And that is when he is called a first-class great Bhagavatham. Not only as a king, you can look at it in today's organization also. The head of an organization, it can be a group, a satsang group, it can be a group of congregation devotees, it could be a temple, or it could be any other bhakti kutirs, or whatever it may be. The head of that group is considered a Bhagavatottama. That means he takes a great responsibility of making every devotee in that group to become devotees of Lord Krishna. So that's the key thing here. So now they're asking, hey, how come? Please tell us about Parikshit Maharaj. Okay. So now this is when the life of Parikshit needs to be discussed. What we will do is, as I said, it's a 1 hour lecture separately. We will discuss glories and activities of Parikshit Maharaj in a separate session. But for now, we will just give a very brief about Parikshit, right? So if you look at Parikshit Maharaj, first point, his birth was great. Even though Brahmastra came to kill him, he was protected by the Lord personally. So Krishna protected him. So imagine Lord personally to protect a person, a devotee, he must be something very credible. So that is, his birth itself is glorious. Second, he ran his kingdom. Now, whatever we saw in Ram Rajya, right, during Lord Ram's activity, even the life, the kingdom during Parikshit Maharaj also was like that. There was no irreligiosity in the entire kingdom. That's how perfect it was. So, Parikshit Maharaj was regarded very highly by his citizens. They had great love for him. Second. Third, he is not a stray personality. He comes with a great lineage. What lineage? He is the grandson of the Pandavas. Right? The Pandava's son, Abhimanyu's son is Parikshit. So he comes with a lineage which is having such rich values. Right? So that also talks about him. Then what all activities he did? He played a lot of role in the Leela of Lord Krishna. And importantly, when the cow was slaughtered, he came to stop that person, to protect religiosity, dharma. Right? He chastised Kali. So like that you can see, he was such a wonderful person. And what he did, look at the sloka, it says, okay, no, he says that he was in the bank of Ganges, not having water, not having food, but staying awake with great eagerness to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? So this is the glory of Parikshit Maharaj. We'll discuss this in detail in the subsequent classes. Okay, text 10. Sa samrat kashyava hetuho panduna mana vardhanaha prayo pavishta gangayam anadritya dhiratstriyam. Translation. He was a great emperor and possessed all the opulence as at his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of Pandu dynasty. He was increasing the glories. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of Ganges and fast until death? So this is the fourth question. Right? The fourth question is also being asked here. And the life and the glories of Parikshit Maharaj is also going to be answered. Now, what is bewildering to the sages there? They're asking, it is not that he retired, okay, I'm retired, now I'm giving away my kingdom to my son, so let me hear some spiritual activities. No, he didn't do that. He was very engaged. He just gave it away and then to come to the river Ganges to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Why did he do that? It is not that his kingdom was in famine. It is not that there were a lot of difficulties in this kingdom that he got dejected and left. No, everything was fine. Everything was, that's why it says, he increased the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. That means, as a king, he was such a glorious king. Someone in the peak of his life. Why did he leave everything and then go? So they're asking this question, right? So they're asking these questions with great astonishment. Okay. So 10 and 11 tells about his renouncing. Okay, text 11. Namanti yat pada niketam atmanaha shivaya haniyat dhanani shatravaha katam sa veera striyam anga dustyajam yuvai satostrastum aho sahasubihi. Okay, so here, if you look at the translation, it just tells what are we explained. He was full of youth, he was so strong, he has conquered the larger kingdom. How come he did it? Look at the translation. He was a great emperor that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender their wealth for their own benefit. So this statement means the allied kings, the nearby kingdoms, they would all come and surrender and pay their taxes. They will become, subservient to this kingdom. He possessed all kingly opulence, which is very difficult to give up at an young age, right? So someone is in the 30s and 40s, he's doing very, very well. If you tell him leave away everything and come, he won't. So, but how come Parikshit Maharaj was able to do it, right? So these are the exclamatory questions, questions with awe, questions with wonderfulness that they were asking, right? So the 4 questions are getting answered in these slokas. Okay, let's look at sloka 12. Shivaya lokasya bhavaya bhutaya ya uttama sloka parayana janaha jivanti natmartam asau parashrayam mumucho nirvidya kuto kalevaram. Translation. Those who are devoted to the cause of personality of Godhead live only for the welfare, development, and happiness of others. They do not live for any self-interest. So even though the Emperor Parikshit was free from all attachment to worldly possession, how could he give up his mortal body, which was the shelter for others? Now, in this question, they are having a doubt that a personality who's very taken great responsibility, right? Now a king has the personality, a responsibility of all the kingsmen. He's giving shelter to them. He's slowly bringing them to the platform of devotion, practice of bhakti yoga. And he is the ashraya. He's the shelter for all of them. And how come he gives up just like that? How come he gave away all the shelter of the people and then he took this path of hearing 7 days, 7 nights of Srimad Bhagavatham, and also give up his mortal body? So they were bewildered, right? So this is a very important sloka. So you can all mug it up. We'll recite this again. Shivaya lokasya bhavaya bhutaye ya uttama sloka parayana janaha jivanti natmartam asau parashrayam mumocha nirvidyakuta kalevaram. Right? So this you can talk about whenever you're talking about great leaders, when you're talking about great personalities who are taking away from grahastha life to vanaprastha life. How come they're able to renounce, control their mind and practice to such platform? So such examples, when you want to glorify, you can quote this sloka, and thereby you can give the apt meaning for such a personality. Okay, so we will do this as the last sloka for the day. So with this sloka, we'll be completing the 4 questions of what the sages asked. Text 13. Tat sarvam na samachakshva prishto yat iha kinchana manye tvam vishaye vacham snatam anyatra chandasat. Translation. We know that you are expert in meaning all of subjects. except some portion of Vedas. Thus, you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. Okay. Here you can see that they're asking, the rishis are asking Sudha Goswami. There are many Vedic literature. For example, if you look at the life of Vyasdev, he compiled these Vedic literature. And then he compiled the Upanishads. Then he also compiled the Sutras. Then Puranas were written. And then there was writing of this Itihasas. So like that, many of these things were written. So how do we hear them? And how do we understand the difference between them? And what is the practical way of approach? So here, Prabhupada writes, the difference between a Brahmana and a Parivrajaka. Now, who is a Brahmana? A Brahmana is one who will be expert in reciting the mantras, right? So, for example, if you look at the literature point of view, the Puranas, the Itihasas, and all these things were more in the format of realization, personalities, activities, pastime, entourage, all those things. It was direct, you can hear them, understand them. But if you go to the Veda Shastra, it was not easy. It was all hymns. It is pronunciation of a certain hymn in a certain meter and in certain lengths. So all these things were very important, right? So that was done only under a Gurukul, that you practice for a certain period of time, get trained about how to pronounce this hymn. So for example, let's say you want to pronounce a Samaveda, right? And you want to give a particular sloka. So it is a hymn in a particular meter. If you don't do the hymn, the length and the meter properly, then the Vedic representation of that mantra doesn't happen correctly. So that needs expert guidance. So all these Brahmanas, they went to Gurukul and then they learned the Veda Shastra through an expert guidance. They became perfect in that. So you see, technicality, the Brahmanas are great. But the message of these Vedic hymns or the Puranas or the Itihasas or whatever the subject matter, that needs to be explained in a very, very simple, nice manner. And that were the experts of Prajivarjakacharya. So now, for example, even in our glorification, Premadhvani, right? We say, no, Jai Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya. No, we say, His Holiness Jai Pataka Swami, Prajivarjakacharya, like that we say. So here, what does it mean? It means that one who's understood the subject and giving the message of this Vedic mantra, giving the message of the subject matter, and preaching all over the world. Such a person. That means you need a combination of both, right? So when you're performing samskaras, so for example, now we had the temple opening, we had so many performance of samskaras and various homas, things like that. You saw these Brahmanas are expert, the right choice of words, right pronunciations, perfect, right? So both simultaneously are required. That's what this is trying to explain us, right? The Brahmanas are more stronger with Pranava mantra, the Omkara mantra representation, while Prajivarjakacharya is more about giving the meaning to us to make us realize. So pronunciation of the mantra and the realization. So both are combined together. And that gives us the realization, right? So hence, now the rishis are requesting Sudha Goswami, so you please tell us these details, right? So with this, we have answered these 4 questions. So what are these 4 questions? What's the first question? Who can answer that?
What period and at what place is
what period, what place, why this great Srimad Bhagavatam got compiled, right? Okay. What's the second question?
Who is Parikshit Maharaj?
Yes. Who is Parikshit Maharaj? And how did he come in contact with?
Shukadev.
Who is Sukadeva Goswami? How did he come in contact with Parikshit? That is the second question. Okay. So that is the one. Because this question is great importance. Why? There are so many sages that Parikshit could have contacted, but why Sukadeva Goswami and how he came into the contact? That's the whole point, right? And Sukadeva Goswami being an Avadut is not easily accessible. So with all these challenges, how did this happen? Okay. What is the third question?
Glories of Parikshit Maharaj.
Yeah, birth and activities of Parikshit Maharaj. Okay. What is the fourth question?
How is he renouncing and listening to Srimad Bhagavatam?
Yeah, even though he's a great king, even though he was opulent, everything was great in his life. And how did he give away everything, renounced everything, and then he came to the bank of Ganges to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So these are the four questions asked by Shaunaka Rishi, representing all the thousands of sages. And these four questions were answered in these 13 slokas that we read today. Okay. Then from the next class, what we will read, we'll read from the 14th sloka. We'll read till probably, I think, 22 or 23, where we will completely understand the activities of Vyasadeva, right? So what are the literature that he compiled? How did he compile all of them? And then what are the divisions and who are his students and what his students they did with that literature? So like that, we'll completely understand this whole arena of this, divisions of literature, divisions of study of the subject, right? Then comes the third section, which we will do in the third class. The third section is about, even though Vyasadeva compiled all the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutras, the Puranas, the Itihasas, everything he compiled, why he was unhappy. Because what Shastra says, if you take shelter of such great literature which represents Sri Krishna, you will be happy. But the life of Vyasadeva was contradictory. Why he was unhappy then? He was unhappy. Bhagavatam uses the word despondency. Despondency means he was moving around here and there. His mind was oscillating. What is it that I'm not able to get absorption and nourishment and satisfaction? Why, after doing all this work? He was in such deep disturbance. That is when Narada Muni visited Vyasadeva. So in that point in time, we will talk about life of Naradaji. Who was he? What are his activities? And some of his pastimes. So that way, we will complete the fourth chapter in totality. So mostly we should complete the fourth chapter in 2 more classes. That we will understand Pakka. Okay? Sounds good?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
So now, question answers. So we'll take question answers for 10 minutes. And to the best possible extent, I'll answer these questions. No questions?
Hare Krishna.
Very clear, Prabhu. Excellent class today. Thank you so much. Dandavad Pranam, Prabhu.
Okay, but okay, that was not a question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, this Sukadeva Goswami did not came out of the womb of mother. Then who came and convinced Sukadeva Goswami that he will be free of all the 3 modes of
Lord Krishna.
material? Huh?
Vyasadeva invites Krishna, he goes to Dwaraka and invites Krishna, and Krishna comes and assures him.
Krishna
personally.
comes, Prabhu.
Yes.
So
He comes
Krishna,
and
Lord Krishna assures Sukadeva Goswami.
Yes.
Prabhu.
Because he's the only one who is beyond the 3 modes of material nature, right?
Right.
So when he gives that assurance, then it is for granted, it is taken. So he gives that assurance.
Okay, thank you.
Prabhu, Shukadeva Goswami is called as an Avaduta. Who else are called Avadutas, Prabhu? Because we know only Shukadeva Goswami as Avaduta, Prabhu. Anyone else are there, Prabhu, as Avadutas?
In Srimad Bhagavatam, there are a lot of Brahmanas. We have an Avaduta Brahmana also. You'll see that pastime in the 11th canto. Most of the rishis are also called Avaduts because of the renounced order of life.
Okay.
I'm not able to pick up name directly, just like that. If anyone knows the answer to that question, they can help me.
Prabhu,
can-
Nityananda Prabhu is called as Avadhuta.
Yeah, but that is in the Leela outside of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? That is more in Gaur Leela, that is.
But he is called Avadhuta Prabhu.
Yeah. He is called Avadhut, but he is more in the,
Gaur.
yeah, like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hare.
See, now since you raised that questions, there are two kinds of personalities. So let me explain you these two kinds of personalities. Okay. There are two kinds of Brahmanas. Okay. One is called Naistika Brahmana, and another is called Upakurvankara Brahman. Upakurvankara Brahman. Okay. So what's the difference between these two Brahmanas? Naistika Brahmana means he is in the brahmachari life up to the age of 25, but after that, he decides not to get married. He continues to be a Brahman. And he leads the life of celibacy throughout his entire life. That is called Naistika Brahmana. That means the entire life is a celibate. Okay. Another type of person is Upakurvankara. Now, what about this one? He's also like a brahmachari. He does all the activities, study with everything. He's celibate and everything. He does all these things. But at some point in time, he decides to get married. But of course, in the marriage life also, he is very, very controlled. He does unification only for sake of progeny. And he leads a life like that. Okay. Now, an example of a Naistika Brahmana is Sukadeva Goswami himself. He is completely celibate throughout his entire life. Now, Upakurvanaka, not Upakurvanaka Brahmana. Yes, Upakurvankana Brahmana. An example is Kardama Muni. See, Kardama Muni was a brahmachari until a certain age, and after that, what he did, he got married, but he continued to lead his brahmachari life post-marriage. Right? They would not involve in activities that indulge in lust or moha in any point in time. Right? So you can see Vyasdev was like that. So you can see, even Srila Prabhupada is like that, right? So even though he was married, with brahmachari life, then he was married, then he took up this. So you have many examples like this.
Okay.
So we have to, when we read Bhagavatam in totality, then we'll understand
Okay.
No.
Thank you so much.
such details.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Dandavats Pranam Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, Dattatreya Prabhu, Avadhuta.
Dattatreya, I have to validate, Mataji. He could be, but I have to just validate.
No.
Okay. So no more questions. Okay, no problem. Have a wonderful day. Whatever you heard, please read these 14 slokas again so that it remains, the impressions become hard on you in your thought process and you're able to remember these. So there were 2 slokas that we talked about. Please read those 2 slokas, mug up them, and read all the purports so that whatever we discussed today, you can relate them, you can get them in their heart. Unless it touches your heart, you will not be able to relate Srimad Bhagavatam on its context. Otherwise, you will hear Srimad Bhagavatam in fragments. It will not be there in your brain. So why this happened? Why that happened? It's very important to understand that. Okay? So please learn them and make your day and life successful. Grandharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gurudev ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Pancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti Vaishnava vrinda ki jai. Vaishnava Thakur Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat pranam. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam Prabhu.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Dandavat pranam.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Dhanush.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji,
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Dhanush.